Before we start this video, a large thank you to Everado, Brimsker, Daniel, Alij, Ethan, and Don for their support on Patreon. I hope you guys enjoy the video. Hello everybody, today we're going to add blood splats to our enemies and players when they get hit, and we're also going to go over the particle effects I used to make the trail in the last video at the end of this video. So, I have a blood splat effect here. I got this from a Cindy package, and they're very common on the Unity Asset Store, as far as also in tutorials online. So just get any kind of splatter effect or whatever effect you want when your enemy or player is getting damaged, and we're going to use that. So let's go to the player first, and we're going to go down to the player effects manager, and actually we're going to go to the character effects manager, which is the base class. So let's search that up here in our Unity, and let's go and double click it and open up in Visual Studios. So let's first start off by adding a header here for the weapon left and right effects. Let's separate this. I'm just going to call this header weapon effects. And then let's make another header just above this. Let's call this one player effects. Actually, let's call this one damage effects, because we're going to have future damages like poison and stuff too. So I'm going to make a public game object here, and I'm going to call it blood splatter effects. And this will again be the game object that the blood splatter effects will be played off of. So let's actually make a function down here, public virtual void, in case you want to change in the future. And let's call this play blood splatter effects. And then let's pass a vector 3. Let's call this the blood splatter location. And we're using a vector 3 because wherever our weapon hits, we're going to instantiate the effect. So let's start off by saying game object blood equals instantiate blood splatter effects, and then we're going to instantiate that on the blood splatter location. We're going to say quaternion.identity, which just means whatever the rotation of the particle effects is, they will come in and instantiate as that. So we're going to instantiate this game object, which is our blood splatter effects, at the vector 3 blood splatter location, which will be the location where the weapon strikes the enemy, and this is just the rotation of the particle effects as they are. So we're going to need to go to the damage collider for this next bit, because that is where we check where we're actually hitting or making contact with a player or enemy. But first, let's go to our effects managers here, and let's drag in our effects for the blood splatter on the player and on the enemy. Now it's important that you have these dragged in, because after we make these additions to our damage collider script, you won't be able to damage a player without having effects there unless you do a null check. Let's go to the damage collider script now. Now let's scroll all the way down where we look for where we actually calculate damage, because we want to do it in the same location. Okay, so on trigger enter. Let's start by changing enemy character manager and renaming it to player, because as you can see, this is under the tag player. So let's keep this all called player. Now right under that, let's make a character effects manager variable. Let's call it player effects manager. We're going to instantiate that as equals collision.getComponent, and we're just going to say character effects manager. Now we can do the exact same thing right below here where the tag is enemy, except instead of calling it player effects manager, we'll call it enemy effects manager. Okay, I think a lot of you can see where this is going at this point. And if you can, excellent. If you can't, don't worry. I'm going to show you right now. So we're going to want to ignore if we're blocking or parrying, because you're not going to bleed under those circumstances. But now, right below here, where we actually do the damage, we're going to simply say, we're going to start by making a vector 3 contact point. This will be the point where your sword or arrow or spell strikes the enemy. And we're going to say equals collision.gameObject.getComponent. We're going to get a collider, and we're going to say dot. We're going to say closest point on bounds. Then we're going to say, we're going to open up brackets, we're going to say transform.position. And this is a very long-winded way of basically saying whichever area the damage collider strikes onto the enemy's collider first, it's going to log that location, and it's going to save it in this little variable here. So I'm going to say detects where the collider on our weapon first makes contact. Very simple. And then we just pass that. So we're going to say player effects manager dot play blood splatter effects, and then we pass this contact point. And then, if I'm correct, it should instantiate the blood splatter effects on this point of contact. Very straightforward, very simple. And we can copy this right now, and we'll come down and we'll paste it. We'll delete these debug logs too, just to keep our console a bit cleaner because we're no longer using these for checking. So we'll paste this down where it says if enemy stats does not equal null, and it will do the exact same thing for our enemy. Except we rename player effects manager to enemy effects manager. Very simple, very straightforward. Now, I think we're good here. So let's just gonna check this now and save it. Yes, that was good. Okay, so let's go and make a script and call it destroy after time, and we're gonna put that script on our blood splatter effects. Okay, and this script is just gonna do exactly what it says. After a certain amount of time has passed, we're gonna destroy the game object, so it's not staying in our scene, just garbage collection basically. So on awake, we're going to first make a public float. I'm gonna call this time until destroyed. I'm gonna initialize mine at 3. Make it 2 or 1 if you want, doesn't matter. And then on awake, I'm going to say destroy, open brackets, game object, and then comma, time until destroyed. And this will destroy this game object after that time has counted down. Very simple, very straightforward. So that way we don't have a bunch of game objects in our scene after the particle effects have went off. Okay, so that should actually do it now. I'm just going to actually make sure we have the effects on our player and our enemy. And I think if we start the game now, which I'm going to do, we should actually have a blood splatter effect when we get hit. So let's go see. Just going to run up to this guy right here now and circle him. Swings at me. Yep, there we go. And as you can see, it's at the point of contact with the sword. That looks really good. I'm very, very happy with that. So you can see there, boom, on the point of contact, and it instantiates. That is awesome. I really like that. Okay, so now I know a few of you in the last video wanted to see how I made my trail weapon effect on the sword when I slash. So I will quickly go over the effects and check out this tutorial. This is actually how I made it, so I'm going to show that on screen right now. Okay, so like I said, I made mine via that tutorial, but I will just go through my settings quickly because I did make a few alterations to it. So now I'm not a master at particles. I don't know all that much, to be quite honest with you, but I'm just going to show you the settings here in my weapon trail. So I have the duration set to 1 second, and here is my size settings and such. So I got the 3D size. And again, these are just kind of randomly chosen numbers. Honestly, I just kind of played with it until it looked nice because, as I said, I'm not really an expert on particles. So there is the max particles is on 1,000. I think that one is kind of important. I'll just go over the stuff that I find is actually important. So the emission rate over time is 40. I think that's relatively important. And then if we go down more to the shape should be on edge. That actually is important, I believe, for giving that effect that kind of makes it look like an edge. Now, I think there is one more important setting I'm trying to recall. Color over time right. So it started off with a white and faded, so it blends out. That is also important. So make sure it gradients out. It doesn't have to be white, whatever you want. And trails is the last one. Make sure the mode is on particles, and make sure the texture mode is on stretch. I do believe that is important. Again, it's been a long time since I made this, and this width over time too. You can see that it goes down over time. So as I said before, all this is explained in the tutorial I just showed on the screen, I do believe, because that is how I made this effect quite some time ago. But if you don't want to make it yourself, there are also plenty of these effects available on the Unity asset store. Alright guys, well, if you did enjoy this video, please drop a like, leave a comment. It does genuinely help my series. And if you're feeling like a total champion, check out my Patreon below. Thank you guys for watching, as usual. And as usual, thank you to my patrons. You are the blood splatter in the blood of my life. Alright guys, I will see you in the next one real soon.